Hello again. So I want to share with you today some questions that really confuse me, that I just don't know the answer to. One of them is, how come organizations seem to be quite happy to spend money on redesigning their website every few years, or even migrating to a new content management system, yet so often they fail to address the content. Instead, they just migrate it from one version of their site to the next. How can that be a thing? And why do people think they can write the content themselves when they would never design the website themselves? Or how do they think they can get away with not maintaining their content until basically the site is just consumed by rot, redundant, out of date, and trivial content? And then how come they think that the solution to that is to redesign the website and take the old content across just as it is? What's wrong in people's heads that prevents them from spending money on their content? I mean, you and I both know that the most important part of any website is its content. And I think everybody, if you ask them, would say the same thing. I mean, nobody visits a website to see what content management system it's running or to bask in the light of its glorious design. No, they come to a website for the content. And yet everybody still seems reluctant to invest in it. Our content is everything. Our content dictates our search engine findability. Our content determines whether people act on our website or complete one of our calls to action. So how should we be investing in our content? Well, as I think about this as a subject, I can offer three pieces of advice really. First is to get a professional copywriter. Second is not to migrate your content blindly from one site to the next. And then third is to carry out the occasional content audit to identify pages that could be improved. So let's look at each of these recommendations in turn, starting with the idea of hiring a professional copywriter. You see, it's very easy to think that you can write your own copy for a website. However, writing good online copy is a lot more complicated than you might think. A professional copywriter will bring so much to your site. And although I've written guides on my website for writing copy yourself, it's always good actually to get someone to do it for you, someone who does that for a living. My second piece of advice is to avoid the wholesale migration of your content from one version of your website to the next. Redesigning a website without addressing the content is like, and I think I've said this before, slapping lipstick on the proverbial pig. It might look better, but it's still going to stink. If your website is underperforming, the answer is rarely a new design. Yes, usability could be an issue, but more often than not, it's actually the content that needs addressing. Instead, we need to go back to basics and ascertain whether the content is addressing fundamental user questions and objections. So we want to do something like carry out a top task analysis to use that as a way of identifying what it is people really care about. So my last piece of advice is to review your content frequently. Over time, content becomes out of date or completely redundant. And so that content that is out of date or inappropriate now is just making it harder for users to find the stuff that is relevant and is up to date if you don't actually remove the rot. Most of the time, this can be achieved simply by having an owner for every piece of content on your website and requiring them to review it regularly. However, let's be honest, all too often that doesn't happen. And if you're in that situation, it's probably advisable to carry out a content audit where you review each and every page based on a set of criteria such as its relevancy, its tone of voice, its readability, etc. And that's also an opportunity to remove that redundant and trivial content, as well as update pages that have become out of date. So whether you're considering redesigning your website or your content hasn't been reviewed in a while, I'd encourage you to take a step back and to look at your content and really to give it the priority it deserves. Of course, if this is something that you'd like more advice on or you just want to chat it over with someone else, because you're not quite sure how to act on the suggestions I've made today, then feel free to drop me an email to paul@boagworld.com. I'm even happy to carry out a content audit if that would be helpful to you.